So it's hour 2 of lesson 8 in our Friday section. We've got Passport configured in our app.js. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and make an account model that our app.js is looking for. So in our models folder, we'll just right click and create a new JavaScript file, which I will call account, all lowercase and singular. We're going to link to Mongoose. Starters. We're also going to link to Passport local Mongoose here. I'm not going to call my variable Passport local Mongoose because it's just too darn long to type. We'll use the abbreviation PLM instead. We're going to set up the schema for this. It's going to be a little different than our drink schema. Here's our drink model. So we set up a drink schema. I guess I should make it camel case this way. New Mongoose schema. So we define the properties of a drink, the attributes and the data types and the validation rules. Shall make that lowercase. The interesting thing in the video, does anybody notice? Let me just go back to the video for a second that we watched. Where are we? I'm not going to show the video. I just want to kind of freeze it for a second. So notice in the schema here, there's actually no username and password field. Why not? He did mention it. Anybody happen to catch that? I'll just play it for a second.
Really, we're only using these as a model. This is a schema, much like the context schema. We call it account and put it in models, account.js. We're only going to define 2 fields, nickname and birth date. And really, we're only using these as an example for the schema. This app won't use either of those. Note that we don't need to specify a username field or a password. Our helper code does that for us. Now
So there's no username and password defined. Why not? Yeah, Passport automatically does it. It assumes if we're using a local strategy, we're going to need a username and password field. So in fact, our schema can actually be blank. Now, if we wanted other fields like phone number, email address, first name, last name, we would add them into the schema. For this application, we don't need that. All we want is a username, password. So our schema can actually be empty. So we're going to connect this schema up with Passport local Mongoose. This is not a regular, just any other model, like any other model in our application. This is the model that Passport local will use for creating and storing the user accounts. And then we make it public by exporting it. As a Mongoose model. So we'll export it as account. We're defining an empty schema. We're connecting it to Passport Local. So Passport Local knows this model is the model to be used for our user accounts. And then we're exporting it the way we did with our drink model. I'll just put in a note here. Empty schema is okay as Passport defines username, password automatically.
If you have, say, birthday in the schema, when the user registered, would it need it, or would it just make it null if you didn't?
If we made it required, yes, then it would crash. It would say birth date's required. So we would have to make sure on our registration form, we had an input for birth date and that field was required. So now that we have this model and app.js is looking for it, now we should be able to run our application. We won't notice any changes to the application, but we should be able to relaunch it with NodeMon. Okay, well, let's see here. What did we do? Models. Interesting. I think made an error somewhere in my model because it's saying there's no name here. Why not? Oh, I think I have the word new here. That's got to come out. I had the new word here. I think I need to remove that. Yep. Now it restarts. So there's no visible, no noticeable change in our application, but we should be able to run it now. Again, if you missed that, I accidentally had the word new in here in my exports command. That should come out. I'm a little disappointed. I'm tired and I'm sick, and you guys are supposed to catch my errors before I do. Come on, people. You're a lot quicker than me this morning. Okay, so our actual configuration part's all done now. We've installed the packages, we've set up the model, we've connected the model to Passport Local Mongoose, and we've initialized and configured all the modules we need in app.js. So now we can actually start using this tool. So your next task is to copy and paste my code. So make sure you go into the lesson 8 folder on Blackboard. There's all the code for register.ejs as well as all the code for login.ejs. So we're going to create those two views with those names and just copy all. It's HTML. There's no JavaScript on there whatsoever. We'll add a tiny bit of JavaScript to log in a bit. So just copy, paste, and set up those two pages. You don't have to make any changes. As I said, we'll modify the login page a little bit later, just so that if we get an invalid login, we can display a message from the server that says the login is invalid. Once you've got these pages created, let's open up the partials header EJS and let's add 3 links to the header. Add a link for /register, a link for /login, and a link for /logout. So our nav bar, instead of 5 links, is going to have, instead of 2 links, we'll have 5. So what I'm going to do is, in between home and drinks, I'm going to put the register and login links here. And I'm going to put drinks and logout at the end. And eventually we'll write a condition so that our nav bar shows either register and login or drinks and logout, but it won't show all 5 of them together. We'll kind of do that part at the end. For now, we can have all 5 visible. Register here. Our last link will go to /logout. Now, if you want to make your application look better, you could add a link to the Font Awesome style sheet, and you could add the little Font Awesome icons beside all these if you wanted to. So if you go back and refresh your home page now, you should get 5 links in your nav bar. So we've got 5 links here. Now, if you try out any one of your new links, what's going to happen when you click register, log in, or log out? Yeah, you get 404, right? We've set up links. We've set up the views, well, at least for register and log in. So how do we fix the 404 errors? If I click any one of these new links now, I get not found. Yeah, we need to set up the routes. We need to set up the GET requests. We'll deal with logout in a minute. There's no point worrying about logout. Won't be its own page. It's just going to sign the user out and redirect them. So we'll deal with that one in a bit. Let's deal with register and login. We want to write a GET request for each of these in our index.js, so it will load either the register EJS view or the login EJS view. So your page should look like, your home page should look like this now. 5 links at the top. They don't have to be in this order. It's just going to make things a little bit easier later on. If we group, these are our public links and these are our private links. And home, that'll always be visible. So if you don't already have it open, open up your routes index.js. Right now, the only thing in here is a GET request for our route page. So let's add GET handlers for register and login. so we can load those forms. We'll call res.render. Show our register page. We'll just pass it a title that says register. Now our register link should work. We click on register, we should get a form with all the HTML we downloaded from Blackboard. So now I click, I get my registration page. If I fill it out and click register, what's going to happen? Why do we get 404? It's going to register. It's going to the same page. Didn't we just set up a route for register? Why does it work when I click the link, but not work when I submit the form? Right, we've set up a get handler. It knows what to do with a get request. Doesn't know what to do with a post request. We haven't written that code yet, so we'll do that in a minute. We also want to write the get request for our login. I'll just copy this. But make sure you actually change all the instances of the word register. This is actually how I usually catch people cheating, because they copy and paste someone else's code, but they don't change it all the instances enough. It doesn't say register here at all. Now my login page should work. It should at least load my form. So if I go back and click login, our 404 goes away. We can now load that EJS file. So we've got the two get handlers. We can display the two forms. Next, our next task is the two post handlers. Sign somebody up when they post the registration form, and then verify the credential when they post the login form. What we want to do is use the account model and passport to create a new user. If we're going to use our account model, we need to make a reference to it at the top of this file. Just like in our drinks route, we used the drink model to do create, read, update, and delete up at the top. We link to the drink model. We need to link to the account model in index.js. So up here, So our controller can talk to our model because our model will talk to an accounts collection in MongoDB. We don't have an accounts collection yet, but Passport works the same way with Mongoose, that if we try and add new data into a collection, that collection doesn't exist, it just builds it automatically. So link to our account model up here, then all of our root handlers can use it. So we're going to call account. And because account, our account model, because it's plugged into Passport Local Mongoose, it inherits any of the methods of Passport Local Mongoose. And one of those methods, register. And this method takes a few parameters. We're going to create a new account. And we're going to specify the username from our form. So if we type in username admin, we're passing in that value from our request body. Then I'm going to put a comma at the very end here. That's the first parameter. Our second parameter, which we pass in separately, is the password. Now notice the format of this is different. The username, we actually set up a username variable in a JSON object and we pass in the form value. Password is just passed in on its own. We're not setting any password variable. Why do you suppose that is? Kara? Yep. You're on the right track. What is Passport going to do with that value that's highlighted in blue? It will, but it's going to do something first. Right. It's going to use our session secret, take that value and salt it, then use that salt value to hash it. So we don't want to set the password directly as the plain text password. We want Passport to do its thing with that. So that's why this is the second parameter. That second parameter value will get salted and hashed automatically. And then we have our, I can do it on this way if it's a little easier to read. Maybe 3 parameters. Our third parameter is our callback function. It gives us either an error or a new account. So if we get an error, you can log it. And maybe just reload the registration page. Then run the GET request. If we get no error, meaning we successfully signed the user up and added them to MongoDB, where should we take that user? Could take him to drinks, or what would be the other option? Yeah, we could take him to the login page. Maybe we'll do that. Keep them on this page and log the error to the console if we have a problem. Otherwise, take them to the login page. So let's try this out, and then we'll want to look at our MongoDB if it works and see what that account actually looks like when Passport Local Mongoose is actually finished creating it. So run your application, go back to your browser, click on your register link, fill out the registration form. But what I want you to do is, for the first account, use the username test and the password test. We'll try it on mine and see if we did it correctly. So I'll go to register, and I'll use test as all of my values. Okay, well, we got to login page, so that's a good sign that there were no errors. Now I want to look in my MongoDB. So I'm going to open up another command prompt. Now, I'm connected to my local MongoDB. So if I just run the command mongo here, and then say use COMP2068 Friday, if I run the command show collections, I now have, in addition to my drinks collection, I have an accounts collection that just got built. If we look, documents in here, here's what Passport does. It's got my username, it's got an object ID, and it generated and stored a unique salt value and a unique hash. If you look in your own MongoDB, even though you use the same password that I did, you're going to get a unique salt value and a different hash. So this helps protect the passwords more than just doing the same hashing algorithm every time. If we had added additional fields in our model, like birth date, and populated them, they'd show up. But even with an empty schema, Passport will store username, salt, and hash. Now, I had a student yesterday say, okay, well, it was easy to look in your local MongoDB, but I'm actually connected to MLab. How do I see what's in my MLab database? Well, if that's the case, you still open up a command prompt, but if you log into your MLab panel, they actually give you the command. So if I click on my database, here, to connect using the shell, meaning command prompt. So you just copy that command and replace these placeholders, including the brackets. You just take out bracket DB user bracket, put in your database username, and then take out your bracket DB password and put in your database password. So if you copy that to your command prompt and replace those two variables, you can then run the command against your MLab database from a command prompt. So that's how you would do it. So it's Mongo, but instead of local, it's your server and your port and your database name minus U, username minus P password.
And when you're done, like you just write Mongo and then it will be connected to test.
It will, no, not to test. It'll be connected. There's the database name right here. So there's the server and there's the database name right there. So yes, then you're connected from your command prompt. So you can look in that database from your command prompt. Mind you, you can also look at it right here. I have no collections in this database, but you can actually look online. So here's my Thursday database. If I click, it tells me how many documents, and I can see the JSON here. So you actually don't really need the shell if you're using MLab. You can see your collections and documents in the MLab dashboard. So that's even easier.
So will the salt value that it creates from our secret word, will it always be the same if it's the same secret word?
Great question. Well, that's easy enough to try. I create an account called test, I'll create one called test2, but I'll use the same password. So I use test again. and then I'll rerun my query and we can look. Okay, so it ran successfully. And now if I go back here and run it again, you'll see, so different hash values. And here the salt starts with 4F3. Here the salt starts with 4ED. So the salt is unique and the hash is always unique as well. Show you one other neat feature that Passport has built in. What happens if I now try and create another account with username test, even with a different password? If I do this, it didn't go to login, which suggests it gave me an error. And if we look in the console, Passport checks for duplicate usernames. So we don't have to add that code manually. Do if we were, say, building a PHP application. Right? For those of you who remember when I had you build your content management system last semester, part of the requirement was when a user signed up, their username couldn't already exist, but you had to write that code yourself. Passport, it already does it, which is great. So we could handle this error. We could display a message back to the user that that username already exists if we want to. Okay, so that's it for the account registration. So it's really quite easy. Once we have Passport all set up and configured, the code to actually register new users is very simple. And it's more secure because we're salting values, and both the salt and the hash are going to be unique. And a duplicate username check is already included. So many of the gotchas with doing this in PHP, like making sure our password field holds 128 characters, etc., worrying about two people entering the same password and getting the same hash value, all those things, all those problems Passport removes for us. Wolfgar, question?
We could use Flash Connect to like tell the user that there's already a user with that name.
Yeah, we probably could. So if we set a message here, we'll actually do that on the login. If it's an invalid login, we'll try to use Flash to display that message to them. We could do it here as well. In the interest of time, I will probably leave that out. Maybe if we have time next week, we could add it in. Okay. Any other questions about registration? Login's going to be even easier. Login's like 5 lines of code. So let's set up a post handler for login now. So what to do when someone submits our login page. I think we can get this working quickly, then we'll take a break. And then we'll need to add some code to secure our drinks pages. All our drinks pages are still public. We'll code our router.post. Actually, this is going to be a little different. I forgot. We don't need this callback, interestingly enough. Passport handles this a little differently. When we get a post request at login, we simply call passport.authenticate. And here we pass in the name of the strategy to use. In this case, our strategy is local, right? Check MongoDB. Whoops, sorry, this bracket doesn't go here. This bracket now comes down here. So we've got a couple parameters. The first parameter is the strategy, which is local. And in here, we can set up some options. The first option is a success redirect. So if we found that credential, what page do we want the user to go to? Where should we take them after they've logged in? Yeah, let's take them to drinks. We also have a failure redirect. Which will be login. Let's keep them on this page. We'll try and use Flash here. I think what we want to set is failure Flash to true. We don't even have to set a message. Whoops, sorry, I left out. My syntax is bad. It's a JSON array. It's not a function call. If Passport successfully authenticates with a local strategy, take them to the drinks page. If it fails, keep them on login and enable the failure flash. We could customize the message, but I think Passport already has a default login failure message. We can just display that. Okay, well, we talked about what does Flash do. We installed Connect Flash here. In app.js, we required it and enabled it. And we looked at it here. Right? Because here we're on post, but then we want to redirect. So then it's going to run the get. So we need a way of passing a message from this handler into the get. So that's what we'll use the Flash for. So we won't see any message yet, but let's try this. First, let's go to our login page. And what did we break? Ah, okay. How do we fix this problem? Passport is not defined. So we're calling passport.authenticate, but this file doesn't know what passport is. So how do we fix that?
Call it index.js.
Yeah, so up at the top, we need to make a reference to passport. Okay, our app restarts now. And try it again. So now there's our GET request. I'll put in an invalid login first. Okay. Kept me on the login page, so we can assume that login failed. If I log in as test and test now, that login was successful, so Passport authenticates me and redirects. Now, it's probably a good idea. We want to use that flash message. If the login fails, we should tell the user it failed. So we're going to need to write a little bit of code in our login EJS to check for a message and display it if we have one. So make sure you reference Passport at the top of your index.js controller. And here was our post function. Are there any questions so far about doing our registration login?
Do we not need to reference Flash in this file as well?
We don't, because because we're not referencing it directly. Passport references it. So we actually shouldn't have to. So what I'd like to do is take a break here for 10 minutes. When we come back, we'll add a flash message display to our login page if there is one. And then we need to work on securing the drinks pages, because all our drinks pages are still public. Once we've done that, then we'll modify the links in our header.ejs. So we will hide or show links depending on whether the user has been authenticated or if they're anonymous. Should be able to, and maybe hopefully display their username up in the header navigation bar as well. Okay, let's take a break here. We'll come back at 5 after.